I do want to reiterate the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. I have never done this before. I did see like 1 minute into a video just so I could see how to drain them. But other than that, I'm using the manual. I'm going to see if I can disassemble and clean everything and put it all back together just using the shop manual. If I get hung up or I feel like I'm going to break an expensive or imported component, I'll stop and search for some more instructions. But uh, just letting you know ahead of time that some of this could be painful to watch. Okay, I am not using a car jack from a 2006 Ford Fusion to lift this motorcycle up, but if I were, I'd get it up a little bit and then I'd put a few blocks underneath the engine there, and it would be totally safe if I were doing it that way. Maybe I should invest in a motorcycle jack. And you've also got to put some blocking under the fan too when you're working in the heat. It's pretty important. Get it just right. Let's get started here. I'm kind of eyeballing everything, trying to figure out the best plan of attack. And whichever one I choose isn't the best one, but we'll get there. You need an Allen wrench to remove the brake caliper there. And I could have turned it if I wanted to, but I'd rather just use a breaker bar for everything. And number two there. This is probably not the first step you should take. As you'll see here, a lot of this becomes a little more complicated than it needs to be because I'm just taking stuff off that looks like it should come off, even though I've had this stuff off before. And right here, I should have stopped and released the pressure um, from the brakes so that I didn't end up doing something like using a pipe to pry those off. But I did, and it's fine. I ended up putting new pads on later anyway. The ones on there are new, but I got some thicker ones, so I swapped them out again. Um, right here, I'm realizing that I should have either taken off the speedometer cable first or taken off that bracket right there that holds the speedometer cable first. See, look how easy that 10 millimeter bolt is for me to turn. Do you think I couldn't turn those other bolts without the cheater bar? I could have. I'm going to grab a zip tie and just kind of get this out of my way for the time being. take a look around, see what we need to do next. Looks like we need a number 17 to get that. And here we are again. I don't know if you call that an axle or a spindle. You know, the thing that holds the wheel on. I've had it off before, obviously, when I put on that new tire, which I did with a set of $16 spoons from Amazon, FYI. The shop near me, I called them, and for both tires, if I brought them the wheels, they wanted like $120. And I thought that was ridiculous. So I am struggling with this axle spindle thing, obviously, and I learned nothing from the last time I took it out because, well, you'll see. I'm having a hard time turning it for a couple of reasons. I put this ratchet. I put this bungee on here to keep it from moving left or right. And I cannot understand why this thing is so tight. I'm afraid I'm going to break something. And then I realize what's going on. Just loosen that bad boy up a couple of turns. You don't have to take it out. You just need to get the tension off of that bolt, spindle, axle, rod through there. It's easier if you do it before you start. And even with that loosened up, I'm just looks like I'm just trying to make this a little bit easier on myself, keep everything from spinning. There are a lot of threads on this, so you're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going and not try to beat it out before the threads are off like I do. On the rear wheel, you almost have to knock it out a little bit. I realize that the tapping isn't doing anything. A lot of turns there. I've got an impact that I could put all this on, but I'm trying to be careful with everything on here because I don't know exactly how everything goes on and comes off, and I don't want to brute force anything or damage anything on parts that concern my safety. You got a spacer there and another, I guess you could call it a spacer there, but it's also your where your speedometer cable attaches. Nice. There it is. Let's get that bad boy out of the way. You got this little brace on the top. It's got 4 bolts in it with hex heads. And like the front 2 bolts there, I believe they're supposed to have little plastic caps on them. I'm assuming just for aesthetic purposes. Those 2 didn't have them. I don't see myself putting those 2 back on. It's hot. It's very, very hot out there. My fan helps move the air around a little bit, but it's just moving hot air around. It's like a solar vortex in there. Not to mention the lights that I have are like really outdated LEDs, and they're supposed to be the one right above me is supposed to be like a high bay fixture, like in a warehouse, like 30 feet in the air. So with it being about 8 foot above me, it's just blasting heat. I don't think this fender has ever once in its 40 whatever years been cleaned. Use a number 10 there. You'll have there's a little bracket on the fender there that has the speedometer cable through it. Remove the front wheel, remove the brake caliper and bracket, pull off the bolt caps, remove the front fender and fork brace. Loosen the fork upper and lower pinch bolts. Pull the forks down to remove them. Now, although I just looked at and read and showed those step-by-step instructions on camera, I I get tunnel vision because of that 1 minute of video I watched on another set of forks, and I forego that last step for the time being. If you wanted to do it the way the manual said, before you do anything else, you take the forks off of the bike. Now, in my situation, and I could just be saying this to make myself feel better, but I believe that in my situation, it helped me out leaving them on for the time being, and I'll show you, or you'll see why here shortly. So this is the actual drain bolt for your forks. If you're just changing fluid, then this is really all you'll need to do. Pull that off, and some fluid should be coming out of there. Now, if you're just changing the fluid, what you'll do is you'll pull that bolt out and you'll pump the fork as if you're going over a bump. And each time you pump it, you're going to have some of the old oil squirt out of there. And you just do that till it was empty. Put your drain bolt back in and fill your forks from the top. Here we need to entirely disassemble these down to their bare atoms, and we're essentially rebuilding and restoring these forks. Those 2 terms are carrying a lot of weight here because
like when you're rebuilding an engine, you rebore parts and replace parts, and all I'm actually doing is replacing the seals. But one of these forks was full of water, and the other one had some oil and water. So I don't know how long they've been that way, but you'll see what it's done to the insides and all the components in there. Now, normally you would not take this out unless you're planning on tearing everything down like I am. If you take this out when you're just changing your oil, it's just going to cause you unnecessary headache. You'll see how absolutely nothing came out of that left fork. There is some stuff in there, but it's not oil. Also, I fight with this for a very long time, and if I had bothered to read another page in the manual, um, it would have been a lot easier. There we go. It's not supposed to be that color, if anybody's wondering. That is rust, and a lot of it, and who knows what else. I was genuinely not prepared for what I got into. I thought this was going to be a straightforward type thing. I was going to clean these up, put new seals in, and I thought it was going to be like a one Saturday project. It turned into a long time. I'm using my big brain here and giving myself a little bar to hold on to for some leverage. I believe that's probably some old thread lock, although it looks more like thread tape the way it's coming off, and maybe that's probably fine to use here. I'd verify that first, but I don't see why it would be an issue. Look at that, literally just pure water coming out of that thing. Water and rust now. And it still hasn't occurred to me yet, but there I finally figured it out. You can pump those to get the liquid out if there was enough in there to pump out. And there's my big man Gus. He likes to come check in, and that's it. Just check in occasionally. And he is a good dog. You want to go in and get some water? You want to go in and get some water? He's been outside forever though. He's getting thirsty. Yeah, you're hot. Come on. You can see there's only one dust seal even there, and it's weird because the one with the dust seal is the one full of water. There's a lot of gunk in there, and at the time, I didn't know what it was, but I believe in the manual it says between the dust seal and the in the oil seal, the main seal, that there is a foam seal that you put in. I don't know anything about that, but that's the only thing I could think that that would be, which tells me there's a pretty good chance that these seals have probably never been replaced in the life of this bike. And if they were, it was decades ago. That's that's the only thing that could cause all of that matter in there, is those like foam or paper seals that the manual tells you to put between those. Um, the snap rings there are completely rusted inside the tubes there. They will not move. I already broke one set of clips on the snap ring tool that I bought, which was a Klein brand, by the way, and I hate Klein, but it was reasonably priced, and there's a reason for it. Either way, I'm just not a big fan of Klein tools, but I digress. So before I went inside for the day, I just filled these bad boys with PB Blaster and just let that soak overnight. I don't think they would have ever come out in one piece without me doing that. You can see I'd love to be using the 90-degree attachment for this snap ring tool, but it literally broke one of the teeth off trying to get this snap ring out. After soaking all night in PB Blaster, it is moving, but the side on the other side of the tube is just stuck in there. Like there's just between the debris and the rust, it's like it's welded itself in there. That it's become one with the tube, and I eventually get it out, obviously, or there'd be no reason for us to be here, but it should not be that difficult. You can see I had to pinch it and then wedge a screwdriver in there and then kind of work around, and that's how I eventually got it loose. And I had to do this the same kind of situation on the other side. The other side is way worse. I fought a lot more with it. And you're probably thinking, wow, I bet you'll be glad to get new snap rings in there once you get these out. I didn't buy any new snap rings. I didn't replace anything except the rubber seals. That's why I'm okay calling it a rebuild or restore. You'll see. This video is 1 hour long. I cut that down from like 5 or 6 hours, and this is just part one of I hope two. The rest of the video is recorded, but it's a lot of material, and I've got to work on editing and getting it cut down to something reasonable. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think if you wanted to jump into a project like this, it is worth watching. So you can kind of see all the trial and error I went through to get everything cleaned up. That's disgusting. And that's the good looking one. And here the battle begins. I don't even know how much of this I chopped out in editing. but it was quite the battle. There was a lot of grunting and heavy breathing, and just I've almost got it, and it was just really stuck in there. Same thing with this one. Like I said, I ended up wedging some screwdrivers and different odd pieces of metal that I had laying around. Just as soon as I'd get a little section out of the crevice there, I'd try to wedge something in it. I don't know if this would have been more difficult or easier if I had taken the forks off first. I feel like this position they're in here made it a little bit easier to work on these snap rings. Maybe I should have gotten a chair or something, but I think you could do it all just as easily on a table.
All right. Thank you.
My wife likes to bring me plastic totes. I have no idea where she keeps getting them, um, but she always brings them to me, and I usually find something to do with them. So thanks, I guess. Look at that intense focus. So the holes where the snap ring tool grabs on, you see I'm using my needle nose hammer there. They were also rusted, so I was using that punch to try to make the hole a little bit bigger, so maybe I could get my tool in there a little bit better. And I was also kind of hammering on it to just try to put a little like radial motion on the snap ring. I got it. And if you think this is phallic, just wait till we get to the cleaning. Some of it should probably be censored. I was like lost when I pulled these off. I did not expect everything to look so bad. I knew that it wouldn't be clean, but this is beyond what I thought I was going to be dealing with. Without like specialized tools, do you know how difficult it is to clean some of these pieces inside and out? Maybe you do, but if you don't, I'll show you. And I guess at this point you could say it's not worth it. I'm going to look for another set of forks, and that's your prerogative, but that's not any fun. I enjoy I enjoy doing this. I enjoy taking it apart, figuring it all out, and just doing something I've never done. And I like to fix stuff. If I don't have to buy something, I don't want to buy it. And I don't think that this is a safety concern, because there is some pitting on some of the parts there, but it's all pretty thick stuff, and nothing was to the point where it was crumbling or had extra holes in it or anything. So I think as long as everything's there and assembled correctly, and you've got a proper seal, and you're sure everything's working right, I think you're okay. So we got all that apart. Now I'm going to actually take the tubes off the bike. You got a cap here at the top of the forks on each side, and you just back it off. I could probably do it with my hand. I just chose not to. See?
Ah, that's for airfill. Okay.
The manual calls for some air fill on the tubes. I was reading on a forum, and a lot of people were saying that they don't run any air, and I'm just gonna try it without it. I don't want to have that additional problem to deal with. So we took the caps off. I'm getting this guy out of the way. And then you'll have two bolts on these clamps right here. They're also Allen head. It's the same size as the bolts that hold the brake caliper. Just like the clamp holding our spindle in, you don't have to take these all the way out. You just want to take the pressure off of those clamps by loosening this up. And then you got two more clamps up at the top. Same thing, just loosen them up. And they should slide out pretty easily. I've got a signature zip tie up there holding on my choke cable. And although we did loosen that clamp, I found that if you just put a flathead in there and just pry it apart a little bit, it helps out a lot. There's that Schrader valve right there if you did want to put air in. I would also just check that Schrader valve before you put everything back together to make sure it's not leaking anyway. I don't know if oil could even come back up through there. So I spent a lot of time just looking at this manual over and over and over again. And it's not that I wasn't paying attention to it, but nothing that I'm reading is working the way that it's supposed to. And it's because everything inside these tubes, you're also not supposed to take this part right here off. Um, I I read that later, but I think I did because I don't know why I did. I don't. Maybe I put it back on. Either way, it needed to be cleaned under there. But the reason things aren't working for me, like the instructions in the manual say, is because everything inside that tube is completely rusted together. It's like one piece inside there. This is an inspection part though. Um, Under that dark coating on there, it's copper. And if you see copper on more than, I don't remember, I'd have to look in the manual, but if there's copper on over a certain percentage of that ring there, you're supposed to replace it. It's like a wear indicator. And I couldn't get any leverage on that top cap there, which has to come off to empty the inside to get everything out. But it is not moving. So I thought maybe a different size crescent wrench might do the trick. And of course, that didn't work. So I thought maybe if I put another clamp there and used a different size crescent wrench, and of course, that didn't work. So I got out the pipe wrench. I didn't want to scratch anything. So, like, like I was worried about scratching anything, but I tried the rag. The pipe wrench wouldn't grab with the rag there, so I said, "All right, this has got to come off. You're just gonna have to risk it." And I did, and it ended up working out. I finally got it broken there. Now I knew there was a spring inside here, but since I've never had one apart before, I didn't know. That's me pressing the Schrader valve to make sure there's no air in it, like there even could be. But I didn't know how much tension that spring put on there, so admittedly, I was a little worried about it. So I put that chain there in case the cap went flying off, but everything's rusted together, so that spring's not doing any springing at the moment. This is the really rusty one. You can see the collar and the main spring both come out pretty easily. They fit in there. That washer goes between the collar and the spring, but this stuff fits in there pretty loosely, so it wasn't up against the packed in against the edges like we see with the piston and rebound spring here. And obviously, I can't get those out, so I'm just going to move on for the time being and kind of see how this other one works out. That is the collar, that is your main spring, that is your piston and rebound spring. That also has a name, but I don't know what it is. So I see how this is supposed to come apart. And apparently I've already gotten the main spring out of here. I'm like, okay, this goes here, and now I can see what is inside the other fork there. And I've just got to figure out how to get it out without breaking anything. My good friend, a little PB blaster and a rubber mallet. A lot of malleting. You can see all the black stuff that's coming out of there. I think I got it, obviously, since the piston's not there anymore, I got everything loosened up a little bit. I'm just trying to shake it down to the end. We got it moving. There it is. Holy crap. She just needs a good bath. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you'll notice there, we are missing a rebound spring. So it either is still inside or it doesn't exist. I'm hoping for the former. And this is a lot of me trying a whole lot of different things. I finally got it knocked out with that little pry bar there, I believe. It had welded itself to the bottom. So we'll do a quick little cleaning session here, make some room in our workspace. Take a look at everything again, see how awful it is, come up with a game plan. Now, I believe most of the rest of part one here is just going to be a whole lot of uh, cleaning. I'm probably just going to let you, or just let it ride out, let you kind of see the process and see what I did and what I went through and what had to be done to clean up a lot of these pieces. And a process it was. This was another full entire day here. So this video is 2 full days of work on a Saturday and Sunday. And the next video is another 2 full days of work to get everything where I was happy with it, back together and back on the bike. I may jump in a few times throughout the rest of the video to maybe explain some of what I'm doing or my thought process behind whatever it was I was doing. These old seals, they're rubber, so they weren't welded in, but everything inside there, they were really stuck. This thing would have been a complete and total death trap trying to ride it like this. There's some of those totes that my wife brought me. I bought the little buckets from Lowe's myself. I had to have them. There's nothing a little carb cleaner can't fix. That's a brand new can, and before it's all said and done, I ended up using all of it and then part of another can. I put all these guys in my little Lowe's bucket, and I just shook them around for a little bit in that carb cleaner. Paper does not hold up well, if you weren't sure. And then I'm gonna take each and every part and I'm gonna clean it. I'm gonna use a wire brush. I'm gonna use um, small grit sandpaper and high grit sandpaper, and I'm gonna use a Dremel with a nylon brush and a wire brush and probably a polishing wheel, an abrasive polishing wheel. I have found that putting a little lubricant um, on the sandpaper to or wet sanding does help out. Later on, I discovered um, the wire wheel for my impact, and it would have made, I think, a lot of this easier. But again, I don't know. I was having a good time with it. I was just trying to get everything as cleaned up and safe as possible. So, like I said, I'm gonna let this ride out, and I'll jump back in if I need to. Just make sure even if you skip through it, make sure to check back for part two, because I think you'll be really amazed at how well everything turned out and how good everything looks when it's all back together. And I don't know, it was just really fun process, really cool process, and it all turned out much better than I originally thought it would.
Look pretty shit.
I did want to mention that this is the collar that is not supposed to have wear on it, so I shouldn't be sanding it. FYI. Fortunately, it looks like 3/4 of the surface is not covered with copper, so we're still okay, but I shouldn't have done that regardless. I believe this was the very rusty spring, and I made sure that I hit every bit of surface area on it with that brass wheel brush there, and I got all the junk off of it, so it looks pretty great. So what I'm doing here is I'm coating all of these metal parts with oil once I'm done cleaning them. If you're putting them directly back into the tubes right after you get done cleaning, this step is not necessary. But in my case, I'm not putting them in right away, and they're going to be sitting for a week, 2 weeks. So the oil will prevent them from flash rusting. You know, when you got a metal part that sits outside for a day or two and it starts getting these like yellow orange spots of rust, coating them in oil will prevent that. So that's what I'm doing with all these parts. I've got some sandpaper wrapped up or rolled up and wrapped around those sticks or rods that I've got in there. So I'm essentially sanding the inside of this piston here. Um, and it works pretty well, but eventually the carburetor cleaner breaks down the sandpaper and it gets stuck in there, and I have to kind of fight it out. So that's what's going on there, and that's what you see coming out here in a second. The rust had piled up and actually caused protrusions in some areas. And while it's not that important in some places, this piston needs to be able to slide freely up and down. So I was really trying to get those areas down and even so that this piston could move smoothly inside the fork tube. If you made it this far, or you just skipped to the end to make me think you did, thank you for watching. And like I said, please make sure to watch out for part two, which is just as riveting as part one. Thank you.